If you're having a hard time training your staff, you're not alone. Most restaurants do. But that's because you're doing what everyone else is doing, which is a static formula method. What is the static formula method? That's when you see someone doing something wrong and you go to train them. And the way you do that is you go talk to them, right? Show them whatever it is, but it's flat, static, no growth, no progression. No KPIs, no strategy. So it stays flat. You're flat learning. What you want to do is use the strategy that the top 10% restaurants are doing and the top businesses are doing, which is a Pinnacle Progression Strategy. That's where you strategically and progressively growing them in the training until they reach the peak, the pinnacle. Now that might sound crazy, but if you honestly want different results, you have to do things differently. You can't be doing things like everyone else. And you have to use what the top 10% restaurants are using, which is the Pinnacle Progression Strategy. And I'm going to show you how to do it in 3 steps. Check it out.
So this is the traditional model that I'd say 90 to 95% of restaurants go with, the static model. Static meaning there's not a lot of movement. It's like flat almost, right? And you can see here that this doesn't actually break any barriers. It's really basic. Now, tell me if your training looks anything like this, right? You go to the onboarding process and then you get a little movement up, right? A little education by a 10-day training program. But again, the reason why it's a static training model is because this training model is so flawed. Let's say you train your staff, you get a new server, they train for 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, whatever it is, but it's not organized, right? I don't have any organization. It's not strategic. It's not progressive. There's no assessments. There's no tests as far as the actual training itself, not food and beverage tests, but actual training days itself. And my trainer, the person that's training my people are also not trained to train. So if that's the case, you're just sitting them saying, Preston's been here for a long time. I want you to go follow him. And there's just no organization, no strategy, no nothing. So with that, you get diminished results. This is the most simplistic way you can train, and it has the least amount of results, period. And almost diminished results, honestly. Well, so with that, you get a little bump, right, of knowledge. And then after that, they're going to go on the floor and get another bump of knowledge because they're going to be on the floor, it's sink or swim. So they have to figure out what they're going to do, and they start learning that way. But again, this training before it right here is it's so poorly done that it doesn't give them the right tools to even absorb all the information they need to get that proper training when they're on the floor doing it on their own. So now they're starting with their hands tied behind their back, which is the worst way to start the relationship with an employee. We have to remember that our employees are guests, right? We want to treat them like guests. We want to give hospitality, right, to the guests. We also want to give hospitality to our employees. Why not? They're an asset. They're a huge part of the company. They have to have a great experience while they're working with you. If you have the mentality of I'm paying them, so they better do a good job, that's the results you're going to get. You're giving them the mentality I'm paying you, so then they're going to give you the mentality I'm here for a paycheck. We don't want that. We want them to be here and fight for us and for soldiers, have passion, buy-in, which is going to be absolutely crucial to have success in a restaurant. Your employees need to have buy-in. And if they don't, it's going to be a long road for you. But you're not going to get buy-in if you're saying, I'm paying you, so do your job. Instead, I want to give you hospitality. I want to be one of the best places you'll ever work at. I want to be known to be one of the best places you ever work at. And it all starts with training. This is exactly how you start off a relationship with training. But this static model is not the right way to go. Now they're on the floor, they're going to go straight. Now, every now and then, you might see them doing something wrong, or a manager might see them doing something wrong. So they approach them and say, hey, don't do it this way, do it that way, right? Good job. Okay. But that just gives them a little bump, and they'll probably go back down here because, again, they're not bought in, they're not passionate, and they're not committed. So they'll do it well for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of days, and they'll go back down. So this is the static model. So if you're going around training your staff saying, like, for example, I want to hire someone to go train my staff, right? Like someone like me, where I'll walk in and I'll just train your staff. Sure, I can do that, but you're going to get a little bump. I could go in there and train them for a week or 14 days, give them all the tools, get them all excited. They're going to be amped up, but that's just going to be a bump, right? Just like this right here. Because as soon as I leave, it's going to slowly go downhill and go back to normal because you don't have anything set up. You don't have any structure. You don't have any systems. The leadership isn't developed to properly support what I trained. So again, it just doesn't do you any good to be training like that. Basically, the way they come out of training here and the way they're on the floor is basically how they're going to operate from then on out. So that's why you keep going to your staff and saying, I keep talking to them. I keep telling them to do these things. They just don't listen. They just don't get it. They're not responsive. I don't know what else I need to do or say to connect with them. It's because of this flawed training in the beginning. So that's why you see a lot of people online, whether it's restaurants or not, and they always say, oh, train your staff this way. Oh, how about have them say this instead of this? Tell your staff to do this. Tell them to do that. Okay, that's great. You can go tell them to do that. And they might. And a couple of employees will do it, and it'll help them. But most employees won't. And you have to worry about most employees, not the couple employees. Everyone's like always, oh, I have these great employees. I wish I had more of them. That's great, but they're not your problem. Your problem is of staff that's not obtaining the information, that's not easily getting it, that's not a top performer. Those are going to be your majority of your employees, and those are the ones you want to design your training on. The ones that are good employees, they'll come in your organization and they're going to excel no matter what. You don't need to worry about them. Just reward them. That's all that matters. The ones that are having a hard time, these are the ones you have to worry about. And this is why this model is flawed. So we got to go up to the Pinnacle Progression Strategy. This is what all the top restaurants do, and this is what all the top businesses do. And it's simplistic in nature. This looks overly complicated, but now you can see this line that never got crossed with the static model is being crossed halfway through the mark. Okay, so there's three things we want to focus on, right? There's three steps. I'm going to go through them with you. There's training, accountability, and leadership. Okay, and so it all starts with the onboarding process. First of all, we want to onboard them properly, right? We want to make sure the onboarding process is sound. If we're coming in there and just flipping through a bunch of HR paperwork, putting them to sleep, that's a horrible way to start the relationship. The onboarding process needs to have energy, it has to have purpose, and it has to have clear-cut executions. Now that you've gotten hired, here's exactly what we expect. Period. This is what we're about. This is what we stand for. And we also are going to show, we're going to be living proof of it. We're now going to ask the staff to be consistent and to give hospitality. And that amongst other things. Those are one of the top two things, right? We want them to be consistent, show up every day, same energy, same attitude, with the same tenacity, same excitement. And then we want them to be hospitable. We want them to give his hospitality, which is its own beast on its own, but we really want to show them that. And the way you show them that is by living it, right? Leading by example. And the problem is most owners or managers are, well, when I go to the tables, I get the best hospitality ever. That's awesome. Are you giving the best hospitality to your staff? Are you being hospitable to them in the employment process, right? Are you showing them hospitality all around? Because if you're just being hospitable towards your guest and that's it, you're going to come off as fake, right? You're coming off as hollow, empty. It's a show. It's not real. Hospitality has to be a way of life, has to be a mindset. You're either hospitable or you're not just, I'm only hospitable at my tables. So you really want to start getting them, you want them to be that way, right? If I could tell you, you can train your staff to be hospitable all around in their life, you'd be like, that's great. How do I do it? Because if they're hospitable all around, they're going to be hospitable at work. Great. What do I do? You want to be the same way. You want to show them that we're hospitable all around. It's a lifestyle. We're all about this. We live it and we breathe it 24/7. So that's why the training process that's why the onboarding process is so important. Next this first step is the training. Okay. The training is always done wrong. It's always flawed in restaurants. Like I said, oh, go follow this person, go follow that person. That's going to lead to the most diminished results possible. Now, let me tell you about all the flaws that are there. You need to have a trained trainer training, okay? Not someone who's a trainer. Okay, he's a designated trainer. Is he actually trained to train? That's really important, because if he's not, when they train, let's say I get hired as a server and I go to 3 different servers to train throughout my process, right? One person does it this way, one person does it that way, one person does it their own way. So they're all doing things differently because they weren't trained properly to be aligned. So when I get hired and I'm going, oh, but I thought he did it this way yesterday. And then the trainer goes, oh, well, this is the way I do it. It's just whatever way works for you. We just want to get this job done. That's the point. Well, now you're telling me there's no standards. As a trainee, you officially told me there's no standards. So I can just do whatever I want when I get out, as long as I get the job done, right? Whatever I deem to see fit. Not here's how we do things. We perform at a high level. We're here for excellence. It's just do whatever works for you as long as you get the job done, right? So that's one of the many ways that training is flawed without trained trainers. And I can go on and on and on about this. We can do a whole nother topic, but just know training the trainer is important. If you're not doing that, you're literally tying your trainer's hands behind their backs and your trainees' hands behind their backs, because you're going to be giving them the most diminished experience possible when they're training. We want to go for excellence. We want to go for above and beyond. This is what we do at this location, not this is what you should just do, what you can do to get the job done. Next, we go to roadmaps. I call it roadmaps, which is basically every single day is mapped out for the trainee. So let's say there's 5 days of training. Day 1's mapped out. Day 2's mapped out. What are we doing and how we're doing it? It's a curriculum. we're putting on a curriculum, and we're making sure they're learning everything. So in those 5 days, they learn everything they need to know to be ready on the floor. They're going to have menu knowledge, computer knowledge, company knowledge. They're going to know it all. So when they go to their tables, your tables can't tell if they're new. And that leads to obviously a lot more professionalism, culture of excellence, and it also makes the trainee have a better experience, because then they know when they go on the floor, hey, I know the menu. When I go to my tables, I can be proud, versus I don't know the menu that well. So when I go to the tables, I feel like I look like an idiot and have to keep going back to the kitchen asking. It's nerve-wracking and it's anxiety inducing. And then you're on the computer and people are waiting for you. That's just a bad experience. Again, you're trying to have a good relationship with the employee, and you're starting it off with a bad set, a bad tone. And again, we want to give them hospitality. Let's make sure they're trained. Let's make sure they're taken care of. We want them to feel like they're taken care of and they're in a professional environment. We want to make sure they know, man, I made a right decision working here. They want them to be excited about it. This is how you get buy-in. This is the beginning of buy-in. They're not going to be bought in if you don't train them right. They're going to be like, what is this place? It's so unprofessional. They don't train me right. And they're going to be looking for the exit sign. We also want assessments. Assessments are absolutely crucial if we're assessing them, so that way they can move on to the next day. If we're not assessing them, why are we moving them on to the next day? And next is the trainer, right? The trainer is so important. They connect all the dots here, as you can see. And when we go up here, you can see there's assessments in the training process, weekly growth plans. So at the end of every week, after they get done training for the first 30 days, we're sitting them down with their trainer or with the management team and saying, hey, so how do you feel about things? What don't you feel like you're grasping? What do you feel like you're grasping? What's working? What's not? Also, here's some things I've seen. I would really think that you need to kind of work on your advanced upselling, just really focusing on it, making sure you're making a connection with your guests, smiling at your tables. I notice you're not doing that. Let's work on these things. I know we're going to get somewhere where you're going to absolutely be a rock star here. You're on your way, and I'm going to tell you the results are going to be great for you, right? And then also a 30-day training program. Now that they graduated from the first 14, 10, 5 days, whatever it is, now they go into a 30-day training protocol. If you think that you can train someone on the nuances of your restaurant in 14 days, you're really selling yourself short. It's not going to happen. No one's just going to obtain the information like that. No one's going to be that good. I was a great server. I couldn't do it. You have to give them more training after the 14 days. The 14 days just gets them floor ready. They're ready to be on the floor and they can execute. The next 30 to 60 and 90 days, you're making them experts. We want them to become experts. So that's what it's going to take. Now, how do we get all this done? We have to have it, first of all, mapped out. You have to have all this stuff created. You have to create all this stuff so that someone could follow the curriculum. It has to be a curriculum that you can hand to a trainer and they can actually execute it. And then there has to be organizational tools through leadership that organize this to make sure it's getting executed right on those weekly growth plans. Are they getting talked to? Are they getting sat down? Are they getting executed? The 30-day program, is it getting executed? This is why we want the leadership team there, and we need accountability behind it, high-level systems to make sure that it's getting executed. We don't need to make it a complex thing where they're thumbing through paperwork all day. Did this person do that? Did this person do that? It should be really simplistic. As soon as someone gets hired, there's just check boxes to go through, alerts that get sent into the manager's inbox to go talk to the trainer to make sure that we're following up on these things. And the trainer gives them an assessment. The assessment gets turned in and the manager gets to manage it. How are they doing? How are they responding? Are they going to work out? Should we keep them? Well, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe they're not going to work out. Maybe they have a bad attitude. Maybe they're not willing to put in the extra work. Maybe they're not going to represent our brand correctly. But we've got to focus on these things. So this might seem overly complex, but it's not. It's simplistic in nature once you get everything in. I always tell people, your food inventory. Right now, your chef goes in, the cooler goes in, fills out the paperwork for the inventory, and then inputs in the computer. Tells you the numbers. Simple as that, right? If I were to go tell someone who's never done this ever on day one to go build something like that from scratch, they're going to freaking freak out, right? If I hire a chef and say, I want you to build all this from scratch, this inventory system, they're going to freak out. But if I just say, here's a piece of paper, go fill that out and then input the numbers into a computer, oh, then that's easy. I can do that. Sure. That's a really easy thing to train. That's a really easy thing to execute. And it's a really easy thing to manage. That's what happens with this when you build it out. And this training will have the biggest impact on your business. You have no idea. Once we get deeper into it, this is what a training module looks like. This is what it looks like when you want to onboard and hire someone and put them through the training process itself. And then we also have this where it's a server protocol. I put servers here, for example, and then trainer protocols. These are all going to be things that are going to be a piece of the puzzle moving forward, but you have to build these things out. They're so important. This is what the big companies do. This is what the successful companies do. This is how you get your staff bought in. This is how you get your staff passionate. This is how you don't have to worry about, oh man, I hired 10 people, only 2 of them are good. It's hard to find good employees. No, we create good employees. We have to hire correctly, make sure they're willing, and make sure they're willing to grow. Outside of that, we make good employees through our training and our systems and our methodology. So I hope this really helped. Like I said, start getting that training program down, have your leadership team built in, start building these things out piece by piece, and you're going to see amazing, amazing results.